Before we get into today's show, I wanted to take a moment to recognize some drastic shifts that took place this morning in the Vancouver sports media market. If you don't already know, shortly after 9 a.m., TSN 1040 went off the air. TSN 1040 and its predecessor Team 1040 have been an integral part of the Vancouver sports media landscape. They were truly the epitome of sports radio. And the fact that despite losing the Canucks broadcast rights, they still had superior numbers to the newer entrant in Sportsnet 650 was a testament to how talented the people that worked there were. They had some of the best conversations. They had some of the best guests. They had some of the best radio that I can remember. We talk about some of these events on our show. And quite frankly, I'm at a loss for words about what we saw take place today. TSN 1040 went off the air, followed subsequently by a radio message that was in a robotic voice that said CKST is no more. And then that message was followed by Good Riddance from Green Day. If there wasn't a better way to project corporate idiocy, I'm at a loss to what it would be. I am so upset. And I see a lot of people on social media and the reaction saying, cancel Bell, and I'm not watching CTV Vancouver and what have you. And you know what? The power to you. But keep in mind that the impact that we have as consumers is based on the media that we consume. So that means our actions could potentially impact those good people who continue to work for CTV Vancouver or some of the other Bell radio properties here in the Lower Mainland. I don't know what the solution is because I would never want for anyone else to lose their job, but I challenge you to look for other ways to ensure your voice is heard. Bell Let's Talk, a campaign that raises attention to the struggles of mental health, as a campaign is one that is difficult for me to say don't support, but I encourage you to support Let's Talk. Mental health is health. It is a 24/7 issue. It is not one day of the year. I encourage you to talk about this all the time. Remove the corporate hashtag. Bell should receive absolutely no recognition after everything that they have done over the past few days. There is no business decision that respects people when it occurs the way it occurred today. So please find ways to take back what they are trying to expropriate from us as consumers and provide that power directly to yourself. Today's show, and the one that we recorded with Natalie and Chloe from Permanent Rain Press, is a happier one, kind of. But we did not know anything that occurred today would happen, and as a result, we obviously don't talk about that. Anna and I will have another episode next week. It is a holiday, but we have already talked about it. We will be talking about the Vancouver Canucks, and we will be talking in greater detail about our feelings as to what happened with TSN 1040 earlier today. So thank you. I hope you enjoy our guests. And remember, there were good people that found out today that they are no longer employed. And if you happen to have a connection to them, please reach out and offer whatever support you can. It is the least that we can do.
6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually as always by Anna Forsyth at A4Forsyth03. As you were in the last show, on early retirement. Matt Lee at @MattLacey_61. We're getting hurt by his cap recapture penalty because the guy retired midway through his deal.
I don't know who that is.
Continuing to remain unfit to podcast, and somewhere on the IR is Adam O'Neill Carter at Adam FOC. But Anna and I, being in charge of the show, decided to bring in some heavy hitters. Yeah. That's right. We have Chloe and Natalie Hoy, who you might know as the writers behind the Permanent Rain Press at the PR Press on Twitter. And we're going to talk a little bit about hockey. So thank you, Chloe and Natalie, for joining us.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here. Big shoes to fill, obviously, just for this one episode, but we're excited.
If you've seen Matt's feet, trust me, those shoes ain't big.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't worry about that. Like, you're here, so you're winning.
But we're here to talk a little bit about hockey in general, Vancouver Canucks, the Permanent Rain Press. For those that don't know, the two of you had put together an article talking a little bit about Canucks podcasts in general. And that's I'll be honest, sort of how you came on my radar. And you had listed off a number of podcasts. Now, if we think about the Canucks podcast ecosystem, I think the current number is about 1,332 at last check as to podcasts that identify as being Canucks podcasts, right? There are a lot. And obviously it would be difficult to go and catalog them all. And we happen to make the list. I actually don't know how, let's be honest. I mean, C4, while we are the longest running, our tagline is also best mediocre. I mean,
yeah, what was it about us that made us make the list?
Yeah, I think when I was looking for podcasts for that list, as I kind of mentioned in a long-spanning Twitter post that we had after a bit of a inconvenient situation, but we looked on Twitter, obviously under Canucks podcast. I think you guys probably showed up pretty quickly because you actually do identify as a Canucks podcast. The others were kind of word of mouth, doing a bit more of a deep dive on Twitter, but obviously really happy to find you. We've been listening in here and there periodically, a lot more since the season has restarted, but we were really happy that, you guys took notice. You obviously shared with retweet, had a lot of love for us, so we thank you for that.
You're welcome. I mean, we'll talk more about it as we dive into the show, but you still haven't explained, how the best mediocre podcast. I think we're actually even number one on your list. Now, granted, maybe it's the fact that we showed up first ish in your research. And I actually have to give credit to JJ Guerrero, who is the guy behind Canucks Hockey Blog. He, on the early days of Twitter, grabbed at Canucks Hockey. And to this day, he'll actually tell anyone who asks, one of the reasons why the follower for at Canucks Hockey is so high is that there are probably a ton of people out there that think it's actually the Canucks Twitter account.
So. I think that's smart.
Yeah, that's not a bad option.
Yeah, and also the fact that we have a number in our name can't do us any harm. Puts us up the top of some alphabetical list, I'm sure.
Sure. But it does create confusion because there is another C4 podcast out there. If you Google C4 podcast, it is a podcast on faith. And as I have occasionally told people, if you're looking for a podcast on faith, the church that we go to is the Church of Pedersen. We're going to talk a little bit about the Vancouver Canucks, though. We'll talk about hockey. The Vancouver Canucks have had a rough spell. Obviously, if you were looking for positivity, this might not be the episode to listen to as it pertains to the team. But we're going to get positive when we talk to both Chloe and Natalie. What are the solutions that might be presented to us as fixing it if we were all to throw on our Jim Benning GM hats, or potentially maybe not the Jim Benning version? But that's all coming up here in the show. We'll take ourselves a quick break before we rewind. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com on the Full Press Coverage Network. Before we actually talk about this sort of week that was with the Vancouver Canucks, let's learn a little bit more about the two of you. As we sort of introduced at the top of the show here, we sort of connected with each other after he had written the article as to Canucks podcasts. I should note that over the years, there's been a number of articles written that have either mentioned C4, Canucks hockey. Myself personally, like there was one article during one of the lockouts. I think it was Harrison Mooney when he used to be with Pass It to Bulis before he became a writer with the Province Sun. He did like the 100 top follows in Canucks Twitter or something like that.
100? That's a lot.
Well, you'd think it's a lot, but considering sort of the unsettled ocean that you waded into when you talked about Canucks podcasts, suffice to say, 100 wasn't sufficient. I was ranked myself at like, I want to say in the 20s or 30s, and Harrison wrote that, yeah, Chris is, he's a fun-loving guy. He, pokes fun at himself. The Vancouver Canucks follow him. That must have been a mistake, right? Like that, because I had the claim to fame that the Canucks actually followed me back then. They don't follow me anymore, but that's okay. Francesco follows me on Twitter, so I got like
much good that's done us.
Yeah. But I'm going to ask, sort of the question just is when it came to the article, like what gave you the idea that Canucks podcasts were something that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, so we actually started blogging after games. We probably blogged 1 or 2 games a week, like the post-game kind of thing, Natalie and I. So she had our column. We named it Everybody Loves Finn. It takes a lot of effort to be blogging, continuously writing notes through every game. I'm sure you both understand that. But we decided instead to do one on podcast just because the playoffs were, I think, just kicking off. And we were thinking, maybe we had seen the list that I think Canucks Army had put out maybe a year ago or so, and we thought maybe it needs a bit of a refresh, and we wanted to give it our own kind of personal style, maybe write a bit more details on what each podcast talks about, the guests they kind of have on, the longevity, just for the purposes of, we always think that that's, a great admiration to be going on for so long, but even the new ones, a breath of fresh air, just giving a bit of light to newer podcasts as well. So that's where the idea came from. We hope it got some traction. Like we said before, hopefully introduce some people to new voices as well as some that have been around for a bit longer, but we were really happy with it. So hopefully you guys were too, and other potential listeners.
I had already mentioned it earlier. I mean, I was tickled that we got referenced. Like, I won't lie. I mean, if there's something that I've learned, just podcasting in general, us podcasters, we're thirsty, and I mean that in the sense that
God.
we all. Well, no, not in the negative
like,
connotation.
No, Chris, you are too old to say thirsty.
Okay. What should I have said in place of that?
I don't know. Maybe
my
keep going
age?
because I don't know what you mean. But
well, no, we like the recognition. We like being told how good we are and whatnot. Did I use the inference incorrectly?
Well, it wasn't incorrect. It just gave me the creeps. No,
I'm sorry for giving you the creeps.
We really appreciated it. I thought it was a great list. Like a lot of Canucks Twitter, Canucks podcast. It's a pretty small world, and we've had like the hosts of a Canucks Conversation. We've had the hosts like of broadcasts on our podcast. So like for me, I see it as quite a friendly, small world. We all have different audiences. We all provide different things. That's how I see it. So, and I thought your list was good because it encapsulated all kind of areas of that. But yeah, I'm curious to know a bit more about like your history as Canucks fans and like what made you go into the blogging thing. Because I used to blog Canucks games and I decided tweeting sassy things was a lot easier too. But yeah, like growing up and stuff, what was your Canucks fandom like?
Yeah, well, for people who don't know, Chloe and I we are twins, so we grew up together in the same house. I actually live in Kelowna right now. But I think, I don't know, when did we really get into hockey. I would say around when they were, 2010, 2011
Yeah, it was
season.
right after the Olympics were here when I realized that there were
Right.
so many great hockey players in town. So it was the season directly after that, which was also the season Jeff Skinner won Calder. Also, side note, I follow the Carolina Hurricanes. But in terms of the Canucks fandom, that was the year it kind of took off. We started watching a lot more games after school. We were still in high school at that time, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Our family watches hockey. We usually try to tune in 7 o'clock. Whenever there's a Canucks game on, it will be on our TV in our living room. And, we had some really great years. There's obviously the Stanley Cup Finals. There will forever be a memory that haunts a lot of the fandom, that one. But other than that, we just love watching the team grow, all the young stars coming up. Obviously, there's a lot of pain involved in being so attached to a team. But
Yes.
we love it. Like you guys, you're still Canucks fans after all this time. So that's what we like to hold on to as well.
And I think in terms of the writing side of it, like we've always been interested in writing, and that's sort of how we started our blog. It's how old is it now? I think it's almost 9 years old.
Okay, so it's been around almost as long, if not the same amount of time. Yeah.
So it's more geared towards the music and pop culture side, is how it started out. And only within the past couple years, we wanted to try doing a little bit more writing about hockey, because that was something else that we were also really passionate about. So we tried to bring that in by doing a few game recaps. It's on a bit of a hiatus now because it is very tricky to do and takes a lot of time, outside of your actual like day jobs and work schedules and things like that, catching full games and, being able to put enough, effort into it and things like that. But so that started last year, I think, when we started writing about hockey.
And that was after Botchford Project.
Yeah.
Natalie was a Botchford Project recipient.
Project, I guess, last December. And actually got to do some freelance work with Pass It to Buis, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about your Botchford night? We'd be really interested to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think it was December that I got to do it, and I was actually already living in Kelowna, but fortunately it worked out that they were like, they gave me a couple different game options that I could go to, and I was planning to be back in Vancouver for the holidays. So I got to do that. I met Jeff Patterson and Thomas Drance, and everyone was really nice, and I think really, they wanted to see you succeed when you were there, and, wanted to give you advice if you had any questions. It was a really neat experience. And I think I felt a little intimidated for sure, being there. And, you always get that whole like, am I supposed to be here? And it was, but everyone was really nice. And I think how I like to write kind of leans towards more of the lighthearted kind of, off the ice kind of stories of the players. And something like that is especially now more difficult, I think, to get out of, the Zoom interviews.
Totally.
The pressers that players are doing now. But hopefully, when COVID gets a little, the vaccines are around and interviewers and press are able to get a bit more of that access again. But yeah, it was really neat, and I'm really fortunate to have had the experience, and it opened up some opportunities for me doing some freelance work as well. So yeah.
I mean, it's awesome that, first of all, congratulations on being part of the Botchford project. But it's awesome that an opportunity like the Botchford Project existed. And I think back to, again, I'm older than dirt. We just already realized this when I tried to drop a term I'm not allowed to use because I'm too old. But I remember the early days of Canucks Social. I mean, I tell the story from time to time. Jason Botchford actually blocked a lot of people on Twitter. Like if you were involved in Canucks Social or you were a blogger, you got blocked. But sort of to where we are in more recent times, and prior to his untimely passing, he was the one who truly embraced this sort of new media. He understood that, whether it be blogging, podcasting, or this sort of new stream experience was one that would require sort of the old school journalist to adapt to. And I mean, often would tell people how in the few conversations that I got to have with him, how he would be always willing to help, lend a helping hand. Like he joined us for an episode of the show, and it took a long time to try to coordinate and make happen because back then our podcast only essentially existed during the season. We took the summer off, but that was when Jason was most available. So, while it took a while to happen, he was the one who wanted it to occur. And I remember that episode, how he was making promises about how he was getting tattoos. And like, he gave us some of the greatest content we had on our show. And, it wasn't that he did that out of an act or anything. That was just him. He wanted us to succeed. And I feel that the legacy that he has instilled in the organization, in the Botchford Project, which I can't say I've heard too much of, obviously the pandemic throwing a wrench into things, but I hope it continues. But it also helped, I think, open the eyes of others. J. Pat and Drance maybe are in the newer world. Drance was a blogger. I mean, I remember back in the day when he ran Canucks Army, and then this is a guy who at one point was senior leadership for an NHL team before obviously coming back to take over at the Athletic Vancouver. J. Pat has seen an evolution in his career.
Right, but he's adapted to it. I think J. Pat's a great example of adapting to the modern world of sports journalism.
The person I was actually going to reference was Tony Gallagher. Now, Tony is old school. This is a guy who he's been around for a long time. Like I have a personal connection to Tony in so much that I played soccer and went to school with his son Ryan growing up when I lived in Vancouver. And quick aside, I happened to find myself in a Canucks locker room after a game years ago. Post game, I got a Peter Zezel stick. I was so excited. And Tony sees me, recognizes me. I haven't seen him for years. Hey, Mr. Golden, what brings you down here? And so the moment that there's someone from the press talking to these two kids, my friend Brent and I are down there, suddenly players are coming over and paying attention to us like we were something special. That is so cool. But Tony is a good example of someone who I think equally started to evolve. Like I have heard such good things about how Tony has helped the likes of David Quadrelli, Chris Faber, like anyone who's asked. And I think this is that legacy of Botchford. So to hear, Natalie, having that opportunity and the fact that two of you have been, essentially writing the permanent printing press since 2012, according to your website, I think is a testament to your dedication.
Yeah, and I mean, Natalie, you said you're kind of leaning into the lighter side of hockey, but I thought your Watchford Project article was really meaningful because it's all about what being a good teammate means, what being a good captain means, and I thought it was a great article. So well done on that. And I think Botch was all about the richness of all rich tapestry of life and bringing it into his writing. So I think that was a great article, one to be proud of for sure.
Thank you. And yeah, I definitely agree with, that's the kind of the legacy that Jason Botchford left, is he had that passion and he knew what people wanted to. And I think he, tied all of that into his writing and his work. And I think that's definitely something that a lot of new up and coming writers are looking towards as well. So yeah, it's great.
So as long suffering Canucks fans, because I concede, I would like to say I'm the longest suffering Canucks fan, though there's probably longer suffering ones than me. But it's been tough since 2011. Things haven't maybe gone as well as we would have hoped. 2012 was nice, but it didn't work out too well. And since then we've had one trip to the playoffs. How did Everyone Loves Finn come to be? Because first of all, that's a phenomenal name for an article. Everyone loves Finn because it's true. Most do. I know of a few people that don't, but that's more.
But they're wrong. Finn is great.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I know. Some people have said we need to change the mascot. I'm like, what's wrong with him?
I mean,
It's
it to me
fine.
makes perfect sense for like
For
him to be an
Vancouver.
orca. What else would we have?
Well, the argument is Johnny Canuck, but
That I
again,
don't like people mascots. Have you seen
I'm
Have
not
you
Jack
say-
seen
from the?
those intro videos with Johnny Canuck? I'm like, that guy can't be our mascot every game. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry to
not
that guy.
family friendly, right? It's like a different kind of thing. But yeah, I find Jack the Giant from the Vancouver Giants absolutely terrifying. So no, thank you to human mascots.
So, but everyone loves Finn. So how did that come to fruition? Was it just a desire to talk about what you were already watching? Like,
I'd say, yeah, pretty much. Just bringing the hockey aspect in, and I don't even know. I know I came up with the name. I don't really remember how. Was I thinking everybody loves Raymond? I don't really know, but I just thought, it kind of works, and it didn't seem like anyone had a super similar name out there. So
It was fun,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, kind of something to fit with the vibe of what we were writing about. So.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie, I might steal the name. You might hear a podcast segment called Everyone Loves Finn. And when the people are like, oh my God, that's a great name. I'm like, totally. I came up with it after someone else told me about it.
Good writers
Stay
borrow,
tuned
great
now.
writers steal.
That's hey, we don't know if we're continuing it on our site. So I mean, if you throw us a little shout out, you might be able to have it for your segment.
Oh
Well,
wow!
I'll get
that
my
was-
people to
give
talk to
it.
your people and maybe see if we can come to a deal. But using this as a segue, I know you had sort of said that it's sort of on hiatus for now. But let's say, having watched the week that was for the Vancouver Canucks, you were tasked with writing an article or a post or segment of Everyone Loves Finn. The Vancouver Canucks have just come off a horrid road trip. I mean, it started off nice. That win against Winnipeg, where everyone thought the magic had happened, things turned around. We talked about this in the last episode. To only go into Montreal to get just walloped, and then follow that up with some really lackluster efforts against the Maple Leafs. So, does everyone still love Finn at this point?
I think Finn is untouchable. It's not his fault.
Yeah, I was gonna say that exact thing. It's not his fault.
It's everyone else's. So, yeah, I mean, it hasn't been great. I think today was a good, you didn't want to, I want to stay away from the whole moral victory thing, but it was a step. Like, I do feel they did play smarter, decent forecheck. And it's not enough. They're just not deep enough of a team to really be able to afford not to keep their foot on the gas all the time. And that's what you're going to find in their games.
Yeah, like what Nally said, I think it was a painful week. I think if you include the Montreal game, it was 20. They got outscored 20-8. I think it was 15-5 for the Leafs. I think it was 20-8. And that's just like, you can't be allowing 20 goals in the span of 4 games. Like, you can't. Even with the 8 goals, it's just like the defense was... I'll use the word horrid because for the most part it was horrid. It's hard because I think that they are just trying to find a way out of this funk where when you don't have. I mean, Pettersson has scored a bit, but clearly they don't have the depth, so it's rough right now.
Yes, I think that's true. I think calling the defense horrid might be like even a bit generous. Like, it's non-existent is maybe the word I would use. Chaotic. Because even today, like in the last Leafs game, it was a much better effort overall. There were just several moments where you just saw defense just, I don't know, up sticks and leave.
Well, so when we talk about the blue line, when we say defense, we're talking about the blue line, I would presume. And it's hard to disagree when you look at the Canucks blue line and suggest that there are not significant chasms when it comes to holes. But I sort of look at what we've seen just the last couple of games. It's defensive effort from the entire team right now that's lacking. So we think back to the game against the Leafs on the weekend where, yeah, it's out of hand when JT Miller decides to mail in his effort after a Holtby giveaway, and as reports suggest, Holtby gave Miller a piece of his mind. But then on the opening goal tonight, Riley is wide open, and if you watch the replay, Tanner Pearson was watching the play. He lost track of his man, and suddenly Riley's between him and the goaltender with nothing else, and all Pearson does is just sort of wave his stick, and that's that. The fact is that these defensive miscues, even if it was just that one, just gut the team. It's not like, oh, we can recover from this. And I think it's depth throughout the lineup. Like right now, Petey got himself a goal, but he's not the same Petey we're accustomed to seeing. Right? It could be he's having his sophomore slump in his third season. We're not getting the lotto line success, and that could be because Petey's not maybe the engine that's driving that line. We saw some early production out of Bo Horvat. He started to wane, and then we call them Jags, but the third and fourth line are full of them, and we're not seeing the moxie from either of those lines, save for like Hoglander. He's playing well. Gaudette, I thought, played really well tonight. Mott
Bailey wasn't bad, actually. He had a decent chance as well.
Good looks, for sure.
But I just, if these are the guys we're talking about jump-starting this team and getting the production from, they are in a world of hurt.
You brought up such a good point. I wanted to, what you said about they can't afford to, let a goal in. And that's because the Canucks, historically, they're just not a comeback team. You go down by one goal, you can't expect them, to tie it up and then score another goal and an insurance goal. And it's just...
Yeah.
And that's the reliance. You think back to like Markstrom. Markstrom bailed the Vancouver Canucks out of many games. We talked about this on our, I think it was our last episode prior to that, but we had said how pre-pandemic shutdown, the Vancouver Canucks were not comfortably in a playoff position. And the way they were trending had them not making the playoffs. Arguably, the pandemic gave them the ability to reset, get healthy, and play in to the playoffs. And then they got on a run. All you have to do is get into that round of 16 and anything's possible. But it occurs to me that what we saw possibly last year might have been that aberration. And we think back to Willie Desjardins' first season. Same sort of thing. Like that Canucks team really wasn't that good, but somehow they figured out a way to make it work. And then what happened after?
We were talking about this in C4 Discord today that, ex-host of the show, ex-friend of the show, Matt, who posited that the team was mentally scarred from losing in the playoffs.
Wow.
Which I don't quite buy. But yeah, that the 2012 team that he was comparing it with won the President's Trophy, so they weren't that mentally scarred. I think obviously the Canucks have benefited from being in weak divisions in the past, and now they don't have that escape option. Not only are they in a tougher division, they're facing the same opponents over and over again. So I think it's like all piled on top of each other. It's like the tough schedule, the tougher opponents. I mean, Canucks aren't dead last. They should be, but because they've played more games than anyone else in the whole league, they're in fifth in the North. So, yeah, it feels like a series of things have kind of come together.
Am I allowed to use the term boomed? Like they're mentally boomed? Am I allowed to use that term?
I don't know what that means.
I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
okay, so
that's a Canadian term, you guys?
That's gamer speak. So as a gamer, I'm allowed to use it. But no, I actually has a question for both of you, Chloe and Natalie. When you look at the Vancouver Canucks, do you think that there is sort of the psychological stress or strain where they're just mentally not there? Is Matt onto something? disregard his comparison to 2012 because Anna pointed out, and I didn't articulate as well. It's hard to compare, the team that's checked out that's winning the President's Trophy with the team that's checked out that's, I don't know, getting a participation medal.
I think there is something to that an extent. I think it's really hard to compare the team they are now to the team it was last year without talking about loss. Like, yes, I think it was the right move to not, re-sign Markstrom and not re-sign Tanev for, the contracts that they're getting in Calgary. But I mean, you can't take those players and can't say, well, I mean, you have the MVP there. You have someone in Tanev who was so reliable, and even someone like Stetcher, who again was decently reliable, and he played with the heart. And the people that they brought in to fill those gaps, like Schmidt, and obviously Hamnick's injured now. They're just not, filling in those holes as they were hoped to. And some of those players who they lost, did have strong, maybe off the ice connections with some of the players who are still around, and, could have helped them through some of the rough patches they're going to. And that's just not there for them right now. So I think even Hughes might have brought it up in his presser today after the game and talked about how they aren't maybe the same team, like with the same players. And I think some of that is taking a toll on them, not being able to find their groove right now. So
yeah, I'd agree with everything that Natalie said. I think that they are exhausted. It's hard to dodge the questions. They're going to get it all the time. What's going wrong? Like, they don't have an answer right now. I'm just wondering, when they will not necessarily, make a front office change, but when their players only meetings going to take place, because a couple of teams, was it Toronto, Calgary, they've already done those meetings. I think the Canucks maybe need one of those. They just need to kind of get in a room, a NHL sanctioned space, and
Right.
yeah, and talk it all out. I think that it's even Miller said pregame that Holtby calling him out. Everyone needs to be held accountable for their actions on ice, which I do think, Holtby wasn't wrong to do that, but they're going to have to figure it out. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah. Well, on that note, speaking of figuring things out, that's what we're going to do next in Half Full Empty, or Half Full, Half Empty. We're joined by Chloe and Natalie from the Permanent Rain Press. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? Because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
Okay, so looking ahead at the schedule, the Vancouver Canucks are either fortunate or unfortunate to be coming home. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's nice to be home. You don't have fans to light you up. Like, you got to consider the pandemic in preventing fans from entering the Raj are probably doing the Canucks a favor, because Vancouver Canucks fans, and I'm not trying to paint the brush to all of them or all of us, but a good majority of them that show up to games vocally express displeasure with effort. Like, case in point, I remember when Luongo came back to Vancouver, I had the opportunity to be at that game, and Luongo was getting bigger cheers than the Vancouver
I was
Canucks
there too.
were getting. Like the Lou chant.
Yeah, I brought, quick off the rails, I brought my brother to that game on his visit to Vancouver, and his partner hadn't really watched hockey much, so there was me and my brother trying to explain to her why the opposition goalie was getting all this support, and it was a weird thing to say. But yeah, I think Canucks fans are definitely on it, let's say it that way. So yeah, they'll let you know if you're not doing what they expect.
But, between sort of now as we're recording and our next episode, the Vancouver Canucks will have played the Calgary Flames twice. Game on Thursday, game on Saturday. And then I've yet to figure out when Anna and I plan on recording. But we may or may not either record prior to that game or after. Who knows? They play them on Monday the 15th. What do the Vancouver Canucks need to do to fix their problems before they face the Calgary Flames, who have gone through troubles of their own and had to have their NHL sanctioned room team meeting?
I think that, Calgary should ideally be an easier opponent than Toronto with the star power that Toronto has. They do have Markstrom now, obviously, which could be a bit of a problem. And I know they lost their games to Calgary earlier. I think players like Virtanen and Gaudette, if they end up back in the lineup, I think where they're playing, like third, fourth line, it's not. The upside for both those players is their offense, but they don't have the players to, help them and playmakers on those lines to complement their styles at all. So for players like them to even succeed a bit, I think they need to be put with like-minded individuals. But they won't be overtaking any of the players in the top six barring an injury. So I think having that opportunity for them could be something. But
I love your voice just being like, please.
It's really hard to say because there's just so many problems.
I want to say the D pairings. I don't know if switching up the D pairings at all, something new. I feel like, they have been doing. Have they been switching up the D pairings?
Have a bit, not as much as the lines.
Not that much.
The lines have been through the mix of Travis Green special mixer for sure, but the D pairing's not that much.
Yeah, like Quinn Hughes, he's had a couple rough plays that have either, resulted in goals or penalties. I like what Natalie and I talk about this a lot, but Nate Schmidt, I'm sorry, he's barely noticeable on the ice. Like, you're never going to scratch Nate Schmidt because, Nate Schmidt, but he doesn't do much, and it's kind of hard to watch him on the ice when he's not making an impact of any sort.
It's kind of hard, right? Because if you're talking about lower end defensemen, you not noticing them can be a good thing. Like if you don't notice Ollie Levy on a night, I thought he had a decent game tonight, mainly because I didn't notice any egregious errors. But Nate Schmidt, one of the reasons he was considered an upgrade is his offensive upside, and he hasn't really done that.
Well, let's consider who Nate's replacing. If you could have had Tanev back and Nate's not giving you offense, why would you get Nate?
Yeah.
Right. And because at least with Tanev, you know what you're getting. He's got experience in the room. One of the challenges that I've had is hearing the stories of players talk about those that have left, like Tanev specifically. Tanev with Dad. We listened to Dad, and he held, when we talk about good in the room, it was quite clear that a lot of the young players really respected Tanev in the room. That's not to suggest they don't respect the Beagles, the Sutters, I don't know who else is good in the room. But I was looking at a statistic that I think above a replacement, Schmidt would be a third line defenseman right now. And the Vancouver Canucks need him to be their first line, maybe second, depending on combination.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think, Chloe, you were kind of mentioning this earlier, but the losses we've had, it's not, we've talked about the defense. If anything, you could say, it's not got that much worse. But when you clear out that stability, and the goalie who ran that defense / bailed out that defense, it's not just about slotting in these new players. You're just changing the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Looking at this schedule, though, I mean, arguably, we're going to see Markstrom each game. Like, there's no back-to-backs. The Flames, I believe, are coming in with as much rest. Actually, let me check that. They maybe don't have as much rest. But the point is, they're coming in. If we see Markstrom every game, Markstrom's going to be up for the challenge. Like, I don't know if you listened to the episode a few weeks back, but there was a BC Lottery prop bet as to whether or not Markstrom would win any game against the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm like, not win any game, shut out the Canucks in any game this season. And I'm like, it'll happen the first game he plays. Watch it. That's what Markstrom does.
Mm-hmm.
If we see Markstrom 3 games, I have to give him a shutout. The way the Vancouver Canucks play and the fact that Markstrom can steal a game. Like, we're not getting Demko and Holtby are getting shelled, but neither one of them is in that space where Markstrom would be. Markstrom could take 60 shots and somehow miracles do happen and he would steal a game. So if he's going to do that for the Flames, that's 3 games at home right there. So that's one of them that the Flames have already won. Like, I'm already conceding a loss based on the pure chance that a goaltender is going to be hot. I look at the Calgary Flames' actual, strength of schedule. They lost 2 games to the Leafs by 1 goal each. Like, they were in both of them. They split games with the Canadiens. They've split games with the Winnipeg Jets. They've split games with the Edmonton Oilers. They beat the Canucks. Like, there's nothing here that tells me that the Canucks have anything going for them. And it's concerning to me because I want to be positive. I truly do, but I don't see the
This
light
team is
here.
making it hard, right?
Yeah, I think major thing is they don't play an offensive game enough. They don't get enough shots. Like, you look at today's game, last minute, they're down 2 goals. They spend half of it passing and still,
Oh, but those passes were crisp.
Yeah, and they end up getting, the 1-point shot and then it getting blocked, and that's just what they do. And I mean, I think their power play, like that was another thing. I think during one of the intermissions, they were talking about Manny Malhotra, who joined the Leafs, and he apparently helps with their power play. And you sit there thinking, oh, we still have Newell Brown, like they're not using they're not using someone like Besser in a shooting position right now when he's on the power play. Like, why doesn't it make sense to have him shooting like from the left circle? Like, you got to have him shooting and PD shooting, and like it just doesn't make any sense.
I would say Besser's shot is one of the few positives. His improved shot, his shot coming back to its power that he originally had, is one of the few positives this year. So yeah, it doesn't quite make sense not to use that as much as possible.
What are you talking about? If you don't show it to other teams his shot, it's a secret weapon you can pull out.
Right.
Yeah, that's not the way they're thinking.
You bring up the Manny Malhotra conversation. Like, I talked about this in C4 Discord. I had actually said I was losing my hair when Toffoli, Tanev, Markstrom, and Stetcher were all see you later. I remember we had a show. We figured one of the 3, Toffoli, Tanev, and Markstrom, was coming back. If we had,
but I was the one that said watch none of them.
Yeah, and Matt and I were hard on you about that. Like, why are you being so negative? Here you are, prognosticating.
I really didn't want to be right, by the way. Really didn't want to be.
But thinking back, like Manny Malhotra and his contribution to the team, like that was known. The fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs won't have a conversation to say, hey, we want you to be an assistant coach on the bench, that to me is a sign that you've got something there. And the Canucks just, I'm glad they didn't stand in his way. But, maybe you could have said, why not do that here?
Yeah. I think we were talking about this earlier on our pre-show, so I'd be interested to get you guys' opinions, Natalie and Chloe, but the Jim Benning's contract, it's quite hard to get out of, and I don't know, our ownership group is not known for being... Well, they're known for being cheap, to put it bluntly. So I don't know if they're interested in paying out that contract. But, we were saying, what was it about Jim Benning that, we couldn't let him walk away after the 5 years that you gave us of mediocre hockey management? And then what are those non-negotiables that we've just had to sign that contract, and yet we couldn't sign Toffoli, we couldn't sign Stetcher, we couldn't sign Malhotra. Like, yeah, I don't know what you guys think of that, and maybe we can transition to talk about Jim Benning and what you think is the answer there.
I think it would be, I mean, as much as, the fire Benning has started, it started probably 5 or so games ago. I think it kind of would be rash to do something right now. I don't know if the team's waiting for a shakeup, but, that's just going to change the dynamic even more. I think that obviously with the news about Toffoli coming out, Natalie, what were you saying? He said the time ran out or something like that?
Well, Jim Benning said that he ran out of time, though he had like 7-8 months he could have signed him.
It's just that, come on, if he had 10 months, it would have been okay, but he just ran out of time.
I mean, with Tanev, Tanev kept saying, oh, they're going to sort out the Markstrom contract and then they'll come to me, and he was being really patient. But then they just ran out of time on everyone, so I don't know what exactly he was spending his time on.
Yeah, it is disrespectful. Obviously, I think that how he's treated these players, in terms of, I don't know. Do you think a firing's coming? It's hard to read, top management or the owners or, what they're thinking, because there's a lot of noise on social media. Some of it's obviously warranted. Some of it's, just too much. But I would hate for them to be kind of influenced by, let's say Twitter. I think they have to think about, what's best moving forward. If they want to write off, the season just because it's going so poorly, not that I want the Canucks to do bad at all, then, maybe they just keep him in the position, see what happens at the end of the season. I don't know if that's a popular opinion or not, but that's kind of where I'm at with Jim Benning. Natalie, anything different to add?
No, something has to change. It's hard. I'm not too familiar with the management side and management contracts and things like that. But yeah, I don't know who's more likely to go, him or coaching staff first. Yeah, it's hard to say, but right now, the players can't figure it out. It doesn't really look like they're playing for the coach or anything like that right now either.
That's the thing. I'm no huge Jim Benning fan, but I don't know if getting rid of him now changes much.
Well, in that therein lies the rub, right? To the point that Chloe raised, does removing Jim Benning simply go in and add more chaos to an already chaotic situation? And Natalie had mentioned, what would be easier to deal with, have change, coaching or GM? Right now, the coaching staff, their contracts
Travis is way cheaper to get rid of.
So if you're the family, if you're Francesco Aquilini, and you're like, well, I don't want to pay a lot of money for someone to go away, that's probably the route you choose. But the risk you run, and we were talking about this on our Instead of the Anthems, our patron pre-show, at what point do you run the risk that the guy who's got the keys to your car goes and does some silly stuff to it? Jim Benning can trade players right now. He can sign new deals. If you let go of a coach, does he get to bring a new one? There's so much of this at play. And on top of that, Jim's halfway through the first year of a 3-year extension. So you have 2.5 years left on this deal. Anna had pointed out how he had, prior to his extension, he had 5 years of mediocrity. The CBC had an article that actually said, the Vancouver Canucks re-signed Jim Benning to a 3-year extension after 5 years of mediocrity. That was the lead. So here we are today, and we're having this conversation. People listen to our show, they know I'm not a Jim Benning guy. I was a Lawrence Gilman guy. Mm-hmm. I wanted Lawrence to be the GM. Part of me wonders if Trev could get a do-over, if that's not actually the case, but none of that's happening. So if Jim stays, let's say hypothetically Jim stays as GM, is there anything he can do to right this ship? I don't know if you saw it. Brent Sopel, former Vancouver Canuck, he actually tweeted out that the players appear to have quit on the team, and he actually called out Jim Benning specifically. It's not us as podcasters or you as bloggers saying this potentially. It's a former NHL player, and one of the arguments out there is that how do you actually know if you've never played the game? Brent's played. So looping back, like what does Jim do to fix this? How does he get the team to buy into him?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think they could have given him the extension just because they saw, like, you know, there was this new core coming in. I mean, for so long it was the same core, the same older players, and you know, you see this opportunity now to build around this young, exciting core. It's like a new thing, but then he's, you know, not done it, and you know, not. So it's, I don't know if there's really anything he can do. Probably not to social media.
I mean, the interesting thing with that is they brought up during the intermission, like, that there might be interest in a player like Jake Virtanen, and then Jake Virtanen goes out and he makes that silly play in front of Holtby. Like, he heard that his name was rumored, there were people interested in him, but you know, you wonder that if there are interested teams, what, you know, it could kind of get in return, because I think that Jake Virtanen still has potential. I would never like fully give up on him. He just, you know, it's not coming consistent at all. It's just, who knows, it just might not work out. I hate giving up, especially on local guys as well, local players. He's from Abbotsford, I think, but who knows, like, it could be a change of scenery. We could get somebody in return that, who knows, could go on a hot streak. Like, you don't know when you're trading players, you just go on previous stats. But I mean, in terms of who could be moved, like, there's an option. I don't think it would impact.
I think that would make sense, because the way they're utilizing him now, I mean, he's not, you know, getting minutes and to really do anything productive for the team. So I think that would be a move if they move him out and get anyone. I saw like Bennett's name being shopped around too with Virtanen, and like anyone, you know, like Chloe said, like, you never know what happens when a player comes here, right? So
the one thing about, like, I'll use Bennett as an example. Bennett's going to cost more than Jake, and Jim's track record here ain't so good. Like, he's the guy that, you know, you barter with at the stall. You say $10, he says $5. You say 15, he says deal. So I worry here that doesn't bode well for whomever the next GM will be in Vancouver.
Well, yeah, and we talked about this a bit on our pre-show, but it does seem like Jim and Travis are just not on the same page whatsoever, especially with Jake. Like, Travis doesn't get on with Jake, hasn't got on with him for a while, but has put him in positions to succeed. Jake hasn't quite proved himself. And so Travis is kind of seems to have just been like, well, I'm just not going to play him then, or I'm going to put him in a line or minimal minutes. Whereas if you were trying to trade him, if Jim Benning had said, okay, I'll go with your plan, I'll try and trade him, I'll try and trade Sven Becci, I'll try and trade Brandon Sutter, like, the Travis might have dealt differently with those players than he did, maybe been a bit less harsh in order to get a better trade, but clearly there's a lack of connection between the two of them.
So, to move on to a lighter topic than the play of the Vancouver Canucks, what's your favorite Vancouver Canucks related memory? I know I threw you on the spot here.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, it's funny though, because we've grown up in Vancouver, and I can count on one hand the number of games I've actually been to. I've been to like 2-3 games at Rogers Arena. The most recent one being the Botchford Project night. So I don't know, I got to say that one, because that was just such an interesting experience for me. And, you know, I actually got to talk to Bo Horvat and talk to Jay Beagle. for my article that I wrote, and they won that game. And I think the one other game that I went to, they lost in overtime against Winnipeg. So yeah, it's got to be that one.
How about you, Chloe?
For me, that's a tough one. I wasn't at the game, couldn't get tickets to any of these, but obviously I would say the Sedins, just because they're twins. My sister and I are twins, but we kind of latched onto them as being, the top two players of the Canucks when we started following them up until when they retired. So either when they retired that last game or when they hung their jerseys in the rafters, those are just so memorable. I don't tear up a lot about in sports moments, but those I think were just so meaningful, and it really brings together fans of all ages. You could be a fan of the team for, the longest time or the shortest period of time. As long as you watch them play, it just had so much of an impact. So I would say, those two nights.
Awesome.
Definitely. I mean, I think that's a really great way of putting it, Chloe, about the legacy of the Sedins, because you only have to look at Bo Horvat. And if you never saw the Sedins play in Vancouver, watch Bo Horvat play, watch how Bo Horvat conducts himself. And a lot of that is the Sedins and what they taught him and what they, showed as an example of how to be a hockey player. So, I think that's so important.
And sort of being the old man here, I'd point out that the Sedins often refer back to, Trevor coming back to Vancouver. I mean, they had the benefit of seeing the Marcus Naslund sort of approach to leadership, but then Trevor's return to Vancouver, and how, they taught them how to be pros in the way of how they conduct themselves. And I mean, the story of how the Sedins had to be convinced to publicly share their donation to Children's Hospital still strikes me as to their mettle. These are two guys who were just doing it just because of their own personal experience, and I'm glad that they to you, Chloe, provide sort of that memory. Can the two of you tell them apart? Do you have twin magic that allows you to identify other twins? Because to this day, I guess, and it would be it's a 50-50 chance I'm going to get it right.
What do you think now?
I still struggle. I think our mom came up with a way, she looked at their face. I think their faces are slightly different shapes.
Yeah, the structure.
They are, yeah, slightly. But I was going to say, it's not the twin magic. It would definitely be your parents would be the ones to ask about telling twins apart.
Yeah. No,
Did
and
you
actually...
Sorry, I was just going to say, do you guys ever pull a Sedin and trick your parents into pretending to be the other twin?
I don't think it ever worked because our mom could tell us apart 100%. So even if we attempted it, we get that question all the time for teachers.
Sometimes calls us the wrong name when he's just not paying attention.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not a twin, but my dad will call me by my brother's name sometimes. So
yeah, same. So
it's a dad thing.
Oh well, no, I was just out of curiosity, only so much that I can't tell them apart. But I never thought about the parent side, because that would make a lot of sense. Parents generally know their kids well enough to be able to differentiate. Until it gets to that point where the name is irrelevant. As long as my mom or my dad don't call me by their dog or cat's name, I'm probably okay with it. So
yeah,
Cool. So here we are, wrapping up a show. First of all, again, thank you for coming on. I hope, we didn't scare you off and have you regret your decision to ever talk about the C4 podcast on your Permanent Rain Press website, which again, I encourage everyone to check out permanentrainpress.com. You had a podcast on CITR back in the day. You guys ever going to refresh the podcast? Are you going to be competition? Will we be complaining about you in the Canucks podcast wars?
Never thought about that. Yeah, we had it for a few years when we were both students still. At one point, we went to UBC and we got involved with the radio station there, CITR. When we had it, it was more of a music-based thing. But I actually never thought about if they do have. They must have some sports programs there. I think they mainly focus on, or were focusing on, UBC sports. Mm-hmm. But it would be Yeah, that would be a neat
It would
thing.
honestly be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I think
I
we
can't see
miss
it coming back now because we both have full-time jobs nowhere near that campus. But
we miss being on air though. It's always fun to, revisit podcasting, and we played a lot more music on that show. I remember I used to talk about the Canucks
yeah, we
games.
did
I don't
bring
think
up the games.
I don't think anyone was
cared who was listening to us at the time. But yeah, it was a fun experience, and that kind of brought back some memories. Us being here now, it's still talking about hockey. So thank you guys again for having us.
But long story short, I don't think that we'll be adding to the Canucks podcast sphere anytime soon. So don't worry about us.
Well, no, I'm not worried. I mean, I look at it this way. Well, I don't think in the Canucks podcasting community there is anyone that would be synonymous to someone like Jason Botchford and sort of a Botchford Project-esque experience. I can assure you that those of us who've been in this space for a long time, us here at C4, myself, Wyatt and Jordan Stanchion, Bowman at Trust the Process, you got Pucks on, like the long running ones, we'd provide any assistance to help get you up and running. But I'm going to, on a personal note, suggest you just join us here in C4 from time to time. Instead of us stealing the Everyone Loves Finn segment, it's simply Chloe and Natalie with the Everyone Loves Finn segment.
We'll leave it there. We'll just put it out there and see. But talking of music, as you guys were with your radio show, I will recommend to all our listeners to go into Permanent Rain Press. There's so many album reviews. I'm going to read through some of those because I have terrible music taste. I find about albums like 5 years after they come out. So I'm going to definitely read through those takes and find some more music. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your Canucks stories.
No problem. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one last thing. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom to all of the thousands and thousands of C4 listeners? Could be about anything.
Chloe, go.
Keep your head up. I'm trying to think of the most cheesy motivational thing out there. Honestly, as much as we talk about the Canucks, you can hear hopefully you can hear the passion in our voices. But sometimes you just need a break. If you're so invested, I think you take a game off, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's the thing with hockey, and I think you watch one game and you're really angry after that game because the Canucks played really poorly, but every game is a new game, and that's why I read about stats and things like that, but it's hard for me to take a lot of it to heart because things are always changing, and I think it's important to keep that perspective that everything moves so fast, and I think it's important to, step back. And it's been a few years of, bad luck and bad everything, but just things are looking up in the next few years. I really, truly believe that. And
How about you, Anna?
Yeah, I'm going to take a leaf out of Natalie and Chloe's book and look positive, because I think positive is we have 3 games against the Calgary Flames and they have no goaltending depth. So we just need to take out Jacob Markstrom and, I think we are good. We have 2 good goalies. They have 1 amazing goalie. So, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, and kidnap
/ maim Jacob Markstrom. That's
who's going to do that. Which player has it in them?
Dark Arts?
I think Jay Beagle is good in the room, and if he wants to be even better in the room, take one for the team and take the suspension, and then he can be even better in the room.
Chloe and Natalie here are positive. Anna takes it to a dark place, and they're like, "Oh yeah, who's going to do it?" Look how bad of an influence
I'm inspiring people.
My final thoughts, and again, I don't understand how this could very well be the case because I think every one of our listeners follows me on Twitter. But if you somehow have missed it, every single day, I share a daily reminder on how to determine if you're a real Canucks fan. You need to answer only one question, and that is, are you a Canucks fan? If you said yes, then you are. But thank you, Chloe, Natalie, for joining us. Again, you can find them on Twitter at the PR Press. It is the Permanent Rain Press, permanentrainpress.com. Please go and check out not only their Canucks articles, the pop culture, music reviews, a wealth of content there. And you can even listen to some of their old podcast episodes from their time at CITR. Trust me, I will. And in the words of Clay Hu, former host, I do not judge. But you're also more than welcome to come back and join us on a future episode. As I mentioned earlier, when you join us once, you become friends of the show, and not everyone out there in the world of social gets that tag. But on behalf of Anna at A4603, myself, Chris at Lightforce, we ask you to join us in C4 Discord if you haven't done so already, discord.io/C4 podcast. You can find us online, c4podcast.com, or on Twitter at the C4 podcast. And remember, at the C4 podcast, very important, because at C4 podcast goes to a whole different church. And last but not least, if you haven't done so already, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/C4 podcast. Benefits of doing so: not only do you get a role in C4 Discord, you get access to Instead of the Anthems, our pre-podcast, pre-show. And if you're listening in and above, then you get to listen to our patron-only show, Off the Rails, come see you twice a month. So I think all of that sums everything up nicely, because guess what? We out.